History leaves a lot behind: documents, monuments, dates carved into stone. But sometimes it also leaves questions. Number 15. Woolpit is a quiet village in Suffolk, England. It's been peaceful for centuries, surrounded by fields and farmland. But sometime in the 12th century, this quiet place became the setting for one of the strangest encounters in English folklore. Two children appeared near a field, alone, confused and frightened. A boy and a girl. What caught everyone's attention wasn't just their sudden appearance. It was their green skin. They were brought to the village. The locals tried to speak with them, but the children didn't understand a word. They spoke in a language no one recognized. Their clothes were also strange, made of a woven fabric that seemed unfamiliar, even to people used to hand-making garments. When food was offered, the children refused everything. Bread, fruit, cooked vegetables, none of it. It wasn't until someone gave them raw beans that they ate, slowly and cautiously, as if they hadn't eaten in days. Sadly, the boy became ill. Within a few weeks, he died, but the girl survived. Over time, her green hue began to fade. She started to learn English and eventually shared a few scattered details about where she and her brother had come from. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land. According to her, the sun never shone there. It was always twilight, and everything, from the trees to the animals, had a greenish cast. She said her people worshipped Saint Martin. That's all she knew, or all she was willing to share. The girl explained that she and her brother had been herding cattle near a cave. They heard the sound of bells, beautiful and strange. They followed it through the darkness, and when they emerged, they were no longer in their world. No one ever found this cave. Historians have debated the story for centuries. Some think the children may have been Flemish refugees, possibly orphaned and malnourished, which could explain their skin color. Others suggest the tale is a symbolic allegory meant to reflect cultural tensions or displaced peoples. But it's worth noting that the story was documented by two respected chroniclers of the time, William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall. Both were known for detailed accounts of real events. Neither claimed to understand the children's origin. They simply wrote what was told to them. The girl, now alone, grew up in the region. She lived an ordinary life, worked in service, and eventually disappeared from history without fanfare. Her name, appearance, and past became a village legend. Woolpit still remembers. There are signs bearing her image, and the tale is told to visitors with quiet reverence. Who were they? Where did they come from? Were they lost children from a war-torn land, or something stranger? The answers have never come, and perhaps they never will. Number 14. Some mountains carry more than just snow and silence. McDoui is the second highest peak in Scotland, remote, foggy, beautiful, and unsettling, because for over a century, climbers who've braved its slopes have come back with a story, the same story, one that shouldn't be real, but keeps showing up anyway. They call it the Big Grey Man, not a legend, not a ghost story told by locals. These reports came from climbers, explorers, and military men, people not known for exaggeration. The first detailed account came from Professor Norman Colley in 1891. He was alone near the summit when he started hearing footsteps behind him, crunching in the gravel, rhythmic, heavy, measured. He stopped. They stopped. He moved. They moved. He never saw anyone. But he said the steps followed him for nearly a mile, getting closer until he finally ran off the mountain in a full panic. And this was a respected scientist, not a storyteller. After Colley spoke out, more reports followed. People described an overwhelming feeling of dread, like they were being watched. Some said it was just the isolation playing tricks. Others weren't so sure. One climber claimed he saw it, a tall humanoid shape, grey and featureless, towering above the mist. He didn't wait to get a closer look. Some believe it's a physical creature, something like a mountain yeti. Others think it's a psychological phenomenon caused by the altitude and weather. But here's where it gets strange. Many witnesses claimed the same exact things. Footsteps when no one's there, deep fear without reason. A tall figure glimpsed through fog. They didn't know each other. They didn't read the same reports, but they described the same experience. Could it be a case of shared hallucination, the brain trying to make sense of emptiness, or is something really up there? To this day, hikers still report strange sounds and feelings on Ben McDoui. Some laugh it off, some turn back without ever reaching the top. Because sometimes the mountain isn't empty, and something might be watching from the fog. Number 13. Some mysteries don't hide. They show up every night like clockwork, and dare you to explain them. Welcome to the town of Hornet, Missouri, or just outside it, on a quiet stretch of country road known to locals as the Devil's Promenade. For over 100 years, people have been seeing something strange there. They call it the Hornet Spook Light. It's not a myth. It's not a one-time event. This thing has been spotted since at least the late 1800s, and it's still showing up today. The light usually appears just above the road, glowing orange or white, bobbing in the distance. Sometimes it hovers, sometimes it zips around. Other times it seems to approach slowly, only to vanish when you try to get close. Locals say it shows up best between 10 p.m. and midnight, and especially on clear nights. And the weirdest part, no one's ever figured out what it is. Scientists, skeptics, and researchers have tried. Some say it's distant car headlights refracting through layers of warm and cold air. Others suggest it's a kind of swamp gas or static charge in the atmosphere. But none of those theories explain why people saw the light before cars were even invented. Some witnesses have reported two lights at once. Others say the light flickers in rhythm, like it's blinking at them. A few even claim it followed their cars or hovered near their windshields. Over the years, the light has built a reputation, not just as a curiosity, but something you feel as much as you see. Visitors have reported chills, dizziness, or a sudden sense of dread when it appears. Some say it's just the excitement, others aren't so sure. Folklore has offered its own answers. The spirit of a lost Native American warrior, a grieving lantern bearer searching for his family, or something older that's simply always been there. The truth? Still floating out there. You can visit the road today, sit in the dark, wait, and maybe, if you're lucky or unlucky, you'll see it for yourself. One light, no source, no sound, just hanging in the night. Number 12. On the night of November 22nd, 1987, television viewers in Chicago sat down to watch the evening news on WGN Channel 9. But their screens suddenly flickered, then shifted to something no one expected. A figure appeared, wearing a rubber mask of Max Headroom, a fictional AI character popular in the 1980s. This person stood in front of a spinning, corrugated metal background, mimicking the signature backdrop from the show. No sound at first, just silence and distortion. Then a strange voice came through, distorted, rambling. The figure moved erratically, quoting TV shows, referencing Coca-Cola, making nonsensical statements. The hijack lasted about 25 seconds before WGN engineers regained control. That was only the beginning. Later that night, the same figure returned, this time during a broadcast of Doctor Who on WTTW Channel 11. The interruption lasted nearly 90 seconds. The masked intruder continued his performance, making references to the Chicago Bears, humming the theme from Clutch Cargo, and, bizarrely, being spanked with a fly swatter by someone off camera while yelling strange garbled phrases. Then it ended, abruptly, without explanation, and the person behind it was never caught. To this day, it remains one of the most sophisticated and unsettling cases of broadcast signal intrusion in American history. Investigators believe it required significant technical skill to overpower two separate television signals. It would have involved equipment capable of transmitting powerful microwave signals directed at local towers, something far beyond a casual prank. But despite an FBI investigation, FCC involvement, and public attention, the identity of the masked individual remains unknown. No group claimed responsibility. No message was ever delivered. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't a ransom. Just noise, wrapped in a mask and a mystery. Some say it was just a prank taken too far. Others believe it was a deeply coded message meant only for a select few. But what truly disturbed people wasn't what the intruder did. It was how effortlessly he entered a space meant to be secure. Live television had always felt safe, predictable, scheduled. That night, viewers were reminded, even in your own living room, something strange can break through the static. No one was hurt, nothing was stolen. But the signal, the mask, the nonsense, none of it ever made sense. And maybe that's why it still lingers. Whoever it was, wherever they are, they left something behind. A moment unexplained. Number 11. Charles Dickens died in 1870, a literary giant, the voice behind A Christmas Carol, Oliver Twist, and Great Expectations. His death marked the end of an era, or so people thought. 3 years later, in 1873, a group of spiritualists claimed Dickens was writing again, only this time through a man named Thomas Powers James, a printer and self-proclaimed medium from Brattleboro, Vermont. According to James, Dickens had dictated an entire new novel from beyond the grave. Its title, The Life and Adventures of Bockley Wickleheap. It wasn't satire, it wasn't fan fiction. James insisted he hadn't written it. He said he sat with a pen and paper, and Dickens' voice came through his hand, word by word, chapter by chapter. He even claimed the spirit of Dickens told him, "I am not done. The story must go on." Naturally, the literary world was skeptical, but here's where it gets strange. People who read the manuscript said it felt like Dickens, the characters, the rhythm, even the quirks in sentence structure. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a parody either. There were even moments, lines, phrases, entire passages that read like something only Dickens himself would have written, familiar, personal. James published the book under the title Mystery of Edwin Drood, the Spirit Pen edition, claiming to have finished Dickens' final, unfinished novel using the author's own guidance from the beyond. Many dismissed it, but others, including some readers and spiritualists, took it very seriously, not because of the medium, but because of the words themselves. Could a small-town printer really mimic Dickens so convincingly? Or did something else help him? No one knows for sure. The spirit-written sequel was never embraced by scholars, but it remains one of the strangest footnotes in literary history, when the world's most famous novelist allegedly kept writing from the other side. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, just a quiet book, a pen on paper, and a voice that wouldn't stay silent. It began with a story told by a traveling salesman. He was driving along a lonely stretch of road at night, just outside town, when he spotted something strange in the headlights. On the side of the road stood three creatures, humanoid in shape, but only about 3 to 4 feet tall. They had leathery skin, wide frog-like heads, and large, lidless eyes that caught the light. Then, according to his account, one of them lifted what looked like a wand. Sparks shot out. The salesman sped off. For years that was it, a single report. Strange, yes, but easy to dismiss. Then, in 1972, the story returned. A Loveland police officer was driving late at night when he spotted an animal on the road. As he approached, it stood up on two legs and stared at him. The officer described it as a large frog or lizard-like creature, about 3 to 4 feet tall, with rough skin and strange eyes. It quickly leapt over a guardrail and disappeared into the riverbank. 2 weeks later, another officer saw the same thing. This time he fired his weapon. The creature vanished again. No body, no blood, no tracks. At first, the officers stood by their stories, but over time, the second officer retracted his statement, claiming it had just been a large iguana, likely someone's abandoned pet. Still, for many locals, the explanation didn't quite fit. Iguanas aren't known to stand upright or jump barriers, and they certainly don't carry wands. The stories of the Loveland Frogmen persisted. Some believe it's a simple case of urban folklore, fueled by imagination, dark roads, and small-town storytelling. Others suggest it could be a misidentified animal, like a large frog, an otter, or something stranger, a surviving prehistoric species, or something not meant to be found. Over the years, the creature has become a cultural fixture. There are frogman festivals, merchandise, and even a musical. The town itself seems to walk a fine line, amused by the legend, but careful never to fully dismiss it, because every once in a while someone comes forward with a new sighting, a flash in the headlights, something splashing in the river, just out of reach, no evidence, no photos, just quiet stories, told again and again. And that's what makes the Loveland Frog so compelling. It's not about fear, it's about mystery, and the strange possibility that something is still watching from the water. Number 9. Hidden deep in the pine barrens of southern New Jersey is a pool of water so clear, so quiet, it almost doesn't feel real. They call it the Blue Hole. It's perfectly round, about 70 feet across, with an eerie blue glow, especially on sunny days. The most unusual part, the water stays freezing cold, even in the middle of summer. At first glance it looks peaceful, but the locals know better. Stories about the Blue Hole have been around for generations. People say it's bottomless, that anything sinking into it disappears completely. Some say there's a strange pull under the surface, no splashing, no ripples, just gone. Many who've visited talk about how the air changes as you approach. It gets colder. Still, almost like the woods go quiet around it. The temperature of the water never changes. Some say it's fed by a deep underground spring, but others think there's more to it. There are reports of swimmers who never made it back, people who claimed they were dragged under. Some experienced sudden cramps or panicked for no clear reason. Others just felt watched, like something below the surface was waiting. And then there's the legend of the Jersey Devil. Locals say the Blue Hole is part of its territory. Some believe it's where the creature was born, or where it hides. Others claim the water itself is cursed, a kind of doorway to somewhere else. Skeptics blame natural causes, underground vents, weird soil, cold pockets, but even they admit something about the Blue Hole doesn't add up. There are no birds singing when you stand next to it, no wind, just a cold stillness, and a strange, heavy quiet that makes you question whether you should even be there. Most people who visit don't stay long. It's not flashy, not loud, but it sticks with you, like something just beneath the surface that almost made itself known. Number 8. Arizona's Petrified Forest is one of the most surreal landscapes in the American Southwest. A desert full of ancient trees turned to stone over millions of years. Their colors are vivid, deep reds, purples, oranges, like gemstones scattered across dry earth. But among all the beauty, there's a story, a quiet, persistent legend. They call it the Petrified Rock Curse. For decades, people have visited the national park and taken home small pieces of petrified wood, despite signs and warnings asking them not to. And for decades, those same people have mailed them back, sometimes with notes, sometimes with apologies, always with a sense of regret. It started slowly. Letters began arriving at the park headquarters, some simple, some deeply personal. One visitor wrote, "Ever since I took the rock, my life has been filled with bad luck." Another said, "Please put this back. I believe it's cursed." Some described sudden accidents, health issues, job loss, or the breakdown of relationships. Others didn't specify, just that something had shifted, and not in a good way. The park eventually collected these messages in what's now known as the conscience pile, shelves of returned rocks, each with a story attached, and over time the pattern became impossible to ignore. People who took pieces felt uneasy. Some claimed to see strange shadows. Others said they couldn't sleep. A few reported things in their homes moving, or a lingering feeling of being watched. Now, no one from the park service says the wood is actually cursed. There's no official belief in the supernatural, but they do acknowledge the weight these items seem to carry. Some say the bad luck comes from guilt, knowing they broke a rule, even a small one. Others think it's be something older, that these ancient trees, fossilized by time, are tied to the land in ways we don't understand. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. The wood always comes back, wrapped in newspaper, tucked in envelopes, sometimes driven cross-country just to be returned in person. The petrified forest doesn't seek to scare visitors. It simply asks, leave what belongs to the land. But those who ignore that request often find themselves returning anyway, not because they have to, but because something won't let them keep it. Number 7. Nestled in the rolling hills of Devon and Somerset, Exmore is a quiet and timeless place. Mist drifts over the moorlands, and the wind carries only the sound of sheep, distant birds, and the occasional rustle in the undergrowth. But in the early 1980s, something else began to stir. Farmers started reporting strange animal attacks. Sheep were being killed, not by foxes or wild dogs, but in a way that was unfamiliar, clean, bloodless, precise. Some carcasses showed signs of a powerful predator, one with a jaw strong enough to crush bone and teeth sharp enough to slice clean. And the strangest part, no tracks, no noise, nothing left behind, except fear. Soon, sightings began. People described a large, black, feline creature, long tail, muscular build, golden eyes that reflected in the dark. It moved quickly, almost silently, slipping through fields and woods without a trace. They called it the Beast of Xmore. The reports kept coming. Walkers, farmers, even local police claimed to have seen it. The descriptions were eerily consistent. A creature the size of a panther, but loose in the British countryside. A place where big cats, officially, don't exist. By 1983, things escalated. Livestock losses reached alarming levels, and the British government got involved. The Royal Marines were brought in to investigate. For weeks, armed personnel scanned the moors with infrared cameras, set up observation posts, and conducted patrols. They found nothing. No fur, no scat, no bodies, just the silence of Exmore and the reports that never stopped. Some believe the beast is a big cat that escaped from a private collection. Before the Dangerous Wild Animals Act of 1976, it wasn't unusual for people in the UK to own exotic pets. When laws changed, Some owners may have quietly released their animals into the wild, but if that's true, how could one survive for decades? Other theories are less grounded, suggesting the beast is a cryptid, a phantom, or a symbol of something ancient and forgotten. The moors are old after all, and filled with local legends. Even now, sightings continue. Trail cams catch brief, flickering shadows. Farmers occasionally report lost sheep, and once in a while, someone walking alone at dusk says they saw something just at the edge of the field. Watching, still. Whatever it is, it's careful, patient. If it exists at all, it has learned how not to be found. The Beast of Xmore remains just that, a beast in name, in shadow, in rumour. The hills are quiet again, but sometimes the quiet hides things. Number 6. On December 5th, 1945, 5 US Navy Avenger torpedo bombers lifted off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a routine training mission. It was called Flight 19, a simple navigation exercise over the Atlantic. The skies were clear, the pilots were experienced. There was nothing unusual about the assignment until everything fell apart. At around 3:30 p.m., radio transmissions began to shift. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader, reported that his compass wasn't working. Then came more confusion. The men couldn't recognize the coastline. They weren't sure if they were over the Florida Keys or heading in the wrong direction entirely. As the hours passed, their transmissions grew more desperate. One pilot was overheard saying, "We can't tell where we are. Everything is wrong. Strange." Radio operators on land tried to help, but the pilots' messages were scattered. One by one, their voices faded. At 6:20 p.m., the last message was received. "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." Then silence. No wreckage was found. No oil slicks. No emergency landings. It was as if all 5 aircraft had simply vanished, and they weren't alone. A rescue plane with 13 men on board was sent to search for them that same evening. It vanished too. Witnesses reported seeing a fireball in the sky, then nothing. Over the next week, one of the largest air and sea searches in US history was launched. Nothing was recovered, not a single piece of debris. The Navy's report called it as if they had flown to Mars. In the years that followed, the story became one of the defining legends of the Bermuda Triangle, a region stretching from Miami to Bermuda to Puerto Rico, long associated with strange disappearances. Skeptics have offered explanations: navigational errors, fuel exhaustion, bad weather, or a cascading mechanical failure. Some even believe Lieutenant Taylor was disoriented from the start, mistaking the Bahamas for the Florida Keys and leading the flight away from safety. But none of those theories explain how 6 aircraft and 27 men vanished in one afternoon, with no trace, no distress flares, no radio contact, no wreckage. Nothing. The mystery of Flight 19 remains unsolved. Official reports have changed over time, but the result is always the same: total disappearance in broad daylight. They left the runway. They never came back. Number 5. In December of 1900, a supply ship arrived at the remote Flannan Isles, located off the western coast of Scotland. The lighthouse, perched on the highest point of Eilean Moor, was supposed to be manned by 3 keepers: Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur. But when the ship approached, something felt off. There was no flag flying, no sign of movement. And when the relief keeper was rowed ashore, the entrance gate to the compound was closed. The front door to the lighthouse was unlocked, and inside, everything was in order. Lamps cleaned, the kitchen tidy. A meal had been prepared, but uneaten. One chair was knocked over, but the men were gone. No bodies, no blood, no wreckage, just gone. The last log entry was dated December 15th. It mentioned severe storms, with one keeper unusually quiet and another reportedly crying, something considered strange for seasoned men used to harsh conditions. One note said the storm hadn't passed, though records from the mainland showed calm weather in the area during those days. Theories followed quickly. Some believe the men were swept out to sea while trying to secure equipment during a sudden wave. The western landing was indeed heavily damaged. A set of oilskins was still inside, suggesting at least one man went out unprepared. Perhaps one keeper fell, and the others rushed to help, only to be pulled into the ocean themselves. But others aren't so sure. Why were 2 sets of foul weather gear missing, but not the third? Why did the logs describe a storm that, according to nearby stations, never existed? And how could 3 experienced men vanish so completely without any trace? Some suggested foul play. Others whispered about madness, sea monsters, or something unnatural. Something that came from the sea or the dark sky above. The official investigation concluded it was a tragic accident, likely caused by rough seas and poor footing on the slippery rocks. But that explanation didn't stop the questions or the stories. Sailors passing by the island later claimed to see strange lights near the lighthouse, long after it was empty. Some heard voices on the wind, others simply refused to go near it. The lighthouse was automated years later. Today it stands silent. The island is uninhabited, the lighthouse empty, but still watching the sea. 3 men, no answers. Just a storm that may never have happened, and a lighthouse that kept shining, even after its keepers were gone. The sea has always taken, but not always this quietly. Number 4. On December 4th, 1872, the British ship Dei Gratia was sailing through the Atlantic Ocean about 400 miles east of the Azores. The crew spotted another vessel drifting strangely in open water. It was the Mary Celeste. Her sails were partially set, fluttering without purpose. There was no distress signal and no one on deck. The Dei Gratia crew boarded the vessel, expecting disaster. Instead, they found something far more unsettling. The Mary Celeste was completely seaworthy. There was no sign of struggle or violence. The cargo, 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, was mostly intact. The ship's stores were well stocked. There was no waterlogging or fire damage. The only things missing were the lifeboat, the ship's papers, and its people. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 crew members had vanished. No trace of them was ever found. The last log entry, dated 10 days earlier, gave no clue to what had happened. It simply described calm seas and routine sailing. The lifeboat being gone suggested an intentional evacuation, but why would an experienced captain abandon a ship in working order? There were no signs of piracy, mutiny, or foul play. Even valuables were untouched. As speculation grew, so did the theories. Some believed the crew feared an explosion from alcohol fumes and fled, expecting to return. Others suggested a waterspout had damaged the ship and made them think it was sinking. Some claimed they were swept away in rough weather while trying to reach land, or that they were lost in a misjudged lifeboat launch. And then came the stranger ideas, whispers of sea monsters, ghost ships, or a supernatural force that took them without a trace. The silence surrounding their disappearance allowed the mystery to grow. An official salvage hearing was held in Gibraltar. The salvage crew was awarded a small portion of the ship's value, far less than expected. The judge suspected foul play, but there was no evidence to support any claim. Eventually, the ship was returned to service. She sailed for years afterward, but was said to bring bad luck to every captain who took command. The Mary Celeste became a legend, not because of what was found, but because of what wasn't. No blood, no damage, no answers, just a ship, adrift, perfectly intact, but without a soul aboard. The ocean has many secrets. This is one it has kept well. Number 3. Edinburgh, Scotland. A city built on layers of history, cathedrals, cobblestone streets, and a graveyard that might be one of the most haunted places on earth. Welcome to Greyfriars Kirkyard, home of the infamous Black Mausoleum. It sits tucked inside the cemetery walls, cold, silent, sealed shut, and for most of its history, it was just that, another old crypt. But in 1999, something changed. A man broke into the mausoleum one night, looking for shelter. He forced open the tomb, stepped inside, and collapsed. He didn't die, but he ran from the site in total panic, raving, bruised, shaken, and not long after that, people who visited the crypt started reporting strange things. Burn marks, scratches, faint knocks from inside, sudden collapses. Some even claimed they were pushed or touched by something they couldn't see. It got so bad that a tour company sealed off the mausoleum for months. They brought in historians, clergy, even skeptics. But no one could explain why so many people walked away with the same injuries and the same story. So what's in there? The Black Mausoleum holds the remains of George Mackenzie, a 17th century lawyer known for his brutal persecution of the Covenanters, a group of Scottish Presbyterians. He earned the nickname Bloody Mackenzie for what he did to them: torture, starvation, execution. His tomb is just steps away from the mass grave of the men he imprisoned. Some think that tension, the persecutor and the persecuted buried side by side, is what stirred something up. Whether it's Mackenzie's spirit or something else entirely, people still report activity near the site to this day. The area around the mausoleum is now known as the Mackenzie Poltergeist Zone. Tours still go there. Warnings are given, and occasionally, incidents still happen. No jump scares, no movies, just a quiet tomb with a reputation that refuses to die. Number 2. In the quiet town of Amherst, Nova Scotia, something strange began in 1878, something that would puzzle witnesses for years, leave newspapers grasping for answers, and eventually be called one of Canada's most documented cases of alleged poltergeist activity. It started in the home of Esther Cox, an ordinary 18-year-old living with her sister and brother-in-law. Esther had recently survived a traumatic personal incident, and shortly after, odd things began happening. At first, it was small, scratching sounds in the walls, objects slightly moved, a sense that something was just out of view. But soon, the disturbances escalated. Furniture tipped over on its own. Heavy knocks echoed through the house, always without source. Items flew across rooms, and Esther, timid and overwhelmed, seemed to be at the center of it all. Her body would swell inexplicably. She claimed to feel burning sensations. At times, witnesses said words and messages were scrawled across walls or furniture as if by invisible hands. Some described disembodied voices, low, muttering, hard to understand. The household was terrified. Word spread quickly. Doctors visited and were baffled. Neighbors were invited in to observe. Ministers prayed. All left with more questions than answers. A few believed it was a hoax. Others insisted it couldn't be explained by trickery. And then came the fire. In one of the most alarming incidents, a small blaze broke out at Esther's bedside. It was quickly extinguished, but after that, her family asked her to leave, not out of cruelty, but out of fear for their safety and hers. Esther was sent to stay with other friends and relatives, but the phenomena followed. At one home, a table lifted into the air in front of several people. In another, knocking spelled out phrases like, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." It became clear, whatever was happening, it wasn't tied to the house, it was tied to her. Enter Walter Hubble, an actor and part-time paranormal investigator. He moved in with Esther for 6 weeks, documenting every sound, movement, and message. His detailed journal would later become the book The Great Amherst Mystery, one of the earliest case studies of its kind. Skeptics, of course, were quick to respond. Some believed Esther was fabricating everything, possibly for attention, possibly due to lingering trauma. Others thought her physical symptoms pointed to undiagnosed psychological distress. But even those who doubted her sincerity struggled to explain how objects moved in front of groups of people, how fires started and stopped, how multiple, unrelated witnesses, all with reputations to lose, reported things they could not understand. Eventually, the activity faded. Esther married, had children, and lived a quiet life. She never sought fame or profit from the events, and she never changed her story. To this day, there is no definitive answer. The Great Amherst Mystery isn't remembered because it proved anything. It's remembered because it never quite went away, because every rational explanation left just a little too much unexplained, because a young woman, already burdened, seemed caught in something no one could fully see or stop, and because sometimes the quietest towns leave behind the loudest questions. Number 1. In the summer of 1518, the streets of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, now modern-day France, witnessed something truly strange. A woman named Frau Trophea stepped into the street and began to dance. She didn't dance for joy or music. There was no festival, no musicians, no crowd urging her on. She danced silently, alone, with purpose. She didn't stop. Hours passed, then a full day, and still she danced, sometimes with arms flailing, sometimes swaying in place. Onlookers tried to intervene. She would rest for minutes, only to rise again. Something, no one knew what, was compelling her. Within a week, others had joined her. Dozens, then hundreds, all dancing, all unable to stop. Historical records claim that within a month, as many as 400 people were affected, moving endlessly in streets, in squares, even collapsing in doorways. The accounts are clear. This was not celebration. This was something else. Some dancers collapsed from exhaustion. Others reportedly died, though the exact number is debated. What is certain is that these people weren't performing. They were suffering. City leaders turned to physicians who ruled out demonic possession. Instead, they blamed it on overheated blood, hot humours, as it was called. The prescription: more dancing. Musicians were brought in, stages were built. Believing it would help the dancers expel whatever afflicted them, authorities gave them a platform. It only made things worse. More joined. More collapsed. It wasn't until the local clergy stepped in that the dancing began to slow. The afflicted were taken to a shrine outside the city, away from music, away from crowds. Slowly, the episode passed, but the question never did. What exactly happened in Strasbourg that summer? Modern researchers have offered theories. One suggests mass psychogenic illness, a kind of psychological chain reaction triggered by fear, social pressure, or trauma. Strasbourg had recently been struck by famine, disease, and stress. In such conditions, the mind can fracture in strange ways. Another theory proposes ergot poisoning, a hallucinogenic mold that can grow on rye in damp conditions. It contains compounds similar to LSD, and it's been blamed for several historical oddities. But ergot tends to cause seizures and convulsions, not rhythmic, prolonged movement. Others think it may have been a religious or cultural phenomenon. Dancing manias were recorded in parts of medieval Europe, often tied to saints, penance, or spiritual release. In those stories, the body moved where the soul could not. But none of the theories fully explain the scale, or the detail, or why it stopped so suddenly. The dancing plague remains one of the most bizarre events in recorded history. It was witnessed by city officials, clergy, and ordinary townsfolk, many of whom left written accounts that still survive. There were no camera tricks, no modern media, just page after page of scribes trying to describe something they didn't understand. And maybe that's why it still haunts us, because it happened, and it happened publicly. People danced themselves into pain, into collapse, into oblivion, without joy, without music, without choice. The dancing plague isn't about what they did. It's about how little we understand what made them do it. Even now, when we think of control of the body, the mind, we imagine ourselves secure. But for a month in 1518, that illusion cracked, and a city danced.